Up at the entrance to the fort on top of the plateau in Chittorgarh, or Chittorgarh. We'll just take a pan from this balcony, if you will. This is the small town of Chittorgarh. And yes, that's pollution. Someone can beguile themselves into believing it's fog, but when you drive through the city and you see innumerable wood fires for heat, everything else, this is pollution. It's in pretty good shape, which suggests it's been restored, which is just fine. I think it's the largest fort in India. We enter the first structure that we see. A little bit of carving up there and up on top, a parrot. It's interesting to see the undulation in that wall, and you wonder if there's some kind of sinkage over time. Looks like some pillars are slightly cattywampus, and yet the structure stands. Some separation up there. Just a look at this wall, because you can see how apparently it had a pretty thick layer of plaster on it. So your imagination can coat all of these walls with a thick layer of plaster and a thin layer of finished plaster, I would suspect. Would have been quite impressive. An impressive space, considering what's left. Notice there's something arched right over there. You can see how the building has probably been stabilized, but evidence of instability. This gives us an idea they've restored the upper little details there and maybe even preserved that layer of plaster. We can only imagine how these spaces were used. I'm guessing that this was all an extension of this palace that I've entered into, and that down below, this somewhat grassed over area was probably the palace gardens, wouldn't you think? They're just a small room. Interesting pillar, and then an almost totally plain, but not quite pillar, and then a third or fourth, somewhat elaborated pillar. Very great differences in the styles, which is interesting that such a style exists, a variety. Notice this stone detail. What was it for? Some kind of canopy over the stairs, maybe? It's a side post right here. Another pretty view of this garden and some what look like temple structures, dome beyond it. There's some stairs that we'll explore. First we'll take a little look up here at this restored area, which is neat because they may continue to restore it and restore paintings that might have been on to give us a feel of how some of these spaces would have looked. but with the plaster it has a more finished and a more light, artistic feel to it. These balcony features give a little bit of a clue. The back portions at the bottom, notice how they're angled like we would for a couch. So you can well imagine this filled with cushions and carpet, and people could relax. This might have been a well, although what's curious is that that stone there has some detail, but my guess is that probably this well opening was covered over at one time just for safety's sake when they transitioned to a newer infrastructure system, and old rock lying around, even if it had carved detail, was used to cover it. That is the other side of that restored portion we looked at, which is quite lovely. And now we're in the palace's garden area. It's hard to appreciate something like this when just the ruins remain, but that's our job, to raise and to finish these walls, and then peopleless grounds that we see with those who would have lived and worked here. What we see as such a dead relic has to be resurrected by our own brains until CG and virtual reality can do it for us. Looking pretty much to the west now. Imagine, raise those buildings' walls high because they were higher. And here in front of us, what looks like some kind of a well or a cistern that's been somewhat carved out, but not beautified in any way at all, like we saw at the Bioris. And once again, as is so often the case, I'm proven wrong. If you look closely at those walls, you will see that they're all finished. They were built up, and that there were some kind of protuberance, if you will, or towers or whatever, that jutted out for whatever reason. My guess is the whole top of that was finished off in a very beautiful way with structures that allowed people to relax and enjoy this water feature. The pedestals we see in the center indicate more, probably some little bridge. There may have been some way for people to boat in here or to walk about close to the water. Looking down below here, answer my own question, there's a set of steps that there are some remains of that go down there. And notice how these edges have been planed off, if you will, from the base rock. So this might have been a very beautiful area at one time, well landscaped. This area I'm standing in is actually, behind me is the toilets room, but I'm wondering if these two features here somehow are a reflection of what would have been over there on those what I called protuberances, using a very sophisticated architectural term. But you can see this is squared off here too, so gives some suggestion. And notice there's remnants of walls there, so who knows what once was standing in that part, which is at the head of this Bowery, for lack of a better term. And notice off on the far hill something else. The building faces to the north from this palace garden area, and we'll walk through it into what looks to be an even larger kind of a garden area. But this would have been a pretty structure. One wonders if there was more up on top than what we see here. The ceiling rather simple. So yes, a further extension of that. I'm guessing I have to retrace my steps to exit. one of the main original entrances into the complex. We're outside this temple. I will not enter into it. I'll take the shoes off. Photography is allowed, plus some other proscriptions. This is a very pretty sight so far. You don't often see this. You could wallow in this culture for a lifetime. I haven't got that much time, so I shoot to gain some basis for future reflection, perhaps. Probably very much the same iconography as we've seen before. And I still have no idea what that little device is for. There's that building that's under restoration, this side looking quite lovely. It's interesting how much I'm reminded of not only what you saw at South American Mayan and Aztec and Inca sites, but also at Angkor Wat. Certainly, if we looked at those three different iconographies, they'd be very different, but the sensation I get is so similar. I think the temple innards are there. We're now on the far side. Shoes off. Must have been an impressive space. It is now, but particularly with that building in the background. Looking back at the front of the temple, which we did not enter, you can see the layout here. Again, to someone who lives here, this is absolutely natural. To us, it would be like seeing a Catholic church or any other Christian church. Duplication. Each of these characters has something important to say to the Hindi. Spouted water. They must have purposely designed it to channel water from the top of this edifice down and out through here. And while not used as such right now, this must have been a shrine type device where you would leave little offerings, so those little cups with whatever it was they burned in them. And here in the back, a Thornos. I don't know, I think it's called Thornos, something close to that. I'm not quite sure what it's for, but it's obviously a gateway, at least there. Certainly it acts as a symbolic gateway to this temple structure. We'll go up and look at the ornate silver-looking doors present also on this little side building, but we can't go in. Looks like a silver overlay, or I think it is silver overlay. Interesting. I wonder if people pick away at that hole and keep making it larger. They're a collection of architectural detail that's dropped off from something over time. Unfortunately, its artist's work is preserved. Apparently, normally only well-to-do Indians come to Chittorgarh, to this fort, and therefore there aren't any inexpensive hostels or lodgings. I don't know why that's the case. It's almost a playful scene. Notice how the left elephant has his right front foot resting on the character. So not only a happy, whimsical, but trusting scene. Now the Indians really do enjoy this music and often play it in their homes, I've heard as I'm walking about. This is the other side of Body Pole. Considerably diminished, particularly here on the left side of that tower. How high that would have rose, who knows, but probably quite a distance. You can see all of the materials required for restoration. These men will live in these tents until it's done, I suspect. There's something mildly insulting about the fact that I can roam about this beautiful building while these men work in bare feet digging a ditch in this rock soil. Life is not fair. The scaffolding, of course, is OSHA approved. That's all bamboo, which actually is pretty tough when it's newly dried, I guess. Stumbling down a path en route to that temple just to see it, because I'm just kind of winging it. I stumbled onto this Baori, not a stepwell in the sense that we've become enamored with, and yet it is. It was dug deep and then walled with stone, and you could get down to it as steps, so I guess it is a step well. Get over there like that and down. Of course, I always manage to figure out the hardest way to do what I'm trying to do. Now we'll go do it the right way. All of this upper stuff that we see has been added, of course, and the steps and that device there may be the beginning of the original stuff, or at least put in place again to simulate that. Notice that all the way down these walls are little niches with carvings in it, so they would have served some kind of a function. Platform has been created for some reason that probably is a little shrine that covers over that bit of carving. We're almost there. If you look down at the end, you'll see some wear marks, and my guess is that that was a little platform up there, and then you dropped your well water bucket down on a rope and past that little whatever that shelf was for, and that's where you got your water. You can see the steps go down deeper into the water, probably indicating not only different water levels at different times, but maybe give you access for swimming and so forth. And from the wet water that's here, somebody's been using it recently. Know what this building is, but the guru type looking person there said by all means go ahead in. It looks like to me a hammam or a Muslim bathhouse. Here a small shrine building, that looking like just a utilitarian building, but this I don't know if it's a hammam or not. Usually there are those domes and multiples of them, and usually in pairs representing where women versus men would go. But I really think this is probably a Hindu building and complex. What looks like head pig, body, bull sculpture is, I'm sure, an important icon. And of course inside here is the temple. I'm not allowed to do this most places. I'll do it now. It's interesting, a linga. I think it's the first one I've seen. It represents, of course, the male penis. I'm not sure if the outer part represents the female organ or not, but you would pour water on that and it would drip down through there. The thing with this one, which looks like it's on top of an old well. I think before we leave, as I look around, on these platforms are more lingas. Linga, of course, being a symbol of male fertility and power and all that kind of good stuff. Across from this utilitarian looking block building, which is a shrine, I believe, is the temple we came to see, only because I could see it from a distance. It looks like a very old temple that has had this square and modern cement edifice added as a cover for the entrance. This is caretaker's home or where next to it. I don't know if this carving is any different than what we've seen in the bigger one. You wonder what the series of columns motif implies on all of these type structures. You can be sure those almost case-like looking niches on the right held some good size important symbols or icons. We can go inside here with the camera. There's not much to see. They aren't dramatic on the inside. I think it's the rituals and in front of what you perform those rituals that has the significance, as well as location of the temple. Now from the wall, we're going to go there, and apparently I have to double back, and I think on that road that was on the other side that I walked up briefly of the actual temple will get us there. This is the front of this large building. Hopefully it will be restored in its detail also. And today, I believe if we stayed long enough, which we won't, we'll be observer of a cricket tournament. I think there are a couple of places for that, and unless it's soccer, I'm not sure. I'm sure these workermen, like they are right now, will take some time out to enjoy that experience. That tower is where I'm going, but there once was something right here in this field that looks like it's been walled off as a pasture of some sort. This small little, somewhat nondescript little temple. I call everything that looks like it has a religious connotation a temple. There's a real amount of effort went into it. You wonder why it was not maintained. It's been cannibalized, or at least stuff has fallen off. At some point we'll wander up this hill and see what else there is, but for the moment we're going to continue to loop around to the left to our tower. It's interesting to note that I've seen very little, if any, English at this site, suggesting confirmation of what someone said, that the Euros don't come here. And here's our tower with accompanying temple. And as a bonus, we can explore part of the wall. Notice how convenient this inner defile is for adding extra protection for the movement of troops back and forth. I'm assuming that's the temple. What's got to be interesting that I'll have to look at my notes for is, what is the purpose of this tower? Large, magnificently ornate. Notice that the top has a beautiful observation area, which I doubt was the original purpose, but it could be wrong. And then there's another one down about a third of the way from the top. This may function like a tower for the 5 daily prayers, but I think all this, the site is Hindustan. We'll just look at some detailed bit. Cascade down the face. So row upon row of the same figure, or similar figures. It looks like. This is impressively heavy and complex. I panned back through the areas we were at. There's the small little shrine we went to after we first passed what would be the soccer or the cricket game, where we saw the lingas. And of course this large building, Kumbha Mahal, I think it's called. And then that beautiful temple that we were at on the left. Below us there are substantial walls It looks almost like a buttress though. But it may have enclosed that area right there that we were talking about earlier that may now be a pasture. Beneath this tower and outside its wall is this pile of abandoned architectural elements. Here we can see, I think, how it's either a base or a capital. But what's interesting is instead of being a solid piece, it's designed to wrap around. And maybe that lip on the bottom underside there from the top indicates that it was supported at the top by a column below. Interesting is I don't see an easy way to get to that wall. I've got a feeling that that's like a moat. So let's go find out. There isn't a moat here except in places. And that actually could figure into a defensive strategy, but thinking it might be restored, and it could be, but these firing ports look like they actually have legitimate thinking behind them. This is designed to shoot or pour straight down. I'm not sure what that stone value is, except perhaps some kind of support for the structure itself. There's another port giving a wider range field of fire, but yet looking down right against the edge of this plateau behind us. You can see its strategy. Where these longer ones are designed to get you if you somehow happen to make it from that lip anywhere to the wall itself. This big one probably just housed cannon that weren't terribly movable. The suggestion of restoration is given by these little pieces of carved detail that are tossed in here randomly. Notice this is fairly wide. Would hold 6 men. I don't imagine they brought horses up there, but they might have. It's not as wide as the 5-horse wide China wall. The bet is that this natural ditch in this rock edge, along the edge, formed a natural bayou, which it somewhat does now. And those walls down there may have been for a shepherd, but they may also have been to dam up the water. I don't know for sure. I think first sign in English. Lady herding her buffalo to wherever, another pasture. Here is the... So I guess we can assume that these pillars probably suggested there were pillars all the way along here. I'm just guessing, and that those individual areas there were stalls. Now whether they had more than one level, I don't know. It doesn't appear to be, but it may. I can't see anything sticking out that suggests they had a method of flooring. And across the street the same set of structures, so this whole thing would have been one big bazaar, and I'm probably standing in somebody's kiosk or the middle of their little shop, so I better move on and get up on that. Now they've cleaned it up a bit. Whether there were these dividing walls beyond that entryway or not, I don't know. And was that area in the back a living quarters or just a part of the shop? It would have been a busy place because there's Body Pole, the entrance. What I find curious is that the inner parts are at a lower grade than the upper. Now, there's that little ledge, and that could imply there was an actual floor. Same here, but then why only on 2 sides instead of 2 opposite sides, or all 4? You can see a little ledge over there. I don't know. And that has a shelf just at the back, or another ledge, and I'm wondering if all these could just be ledges, which is why they don't conform to my idea for a floor. Also notice how high these niches are. Does that suggest there were 2 floors, or that the first floor's grade was right at this level or just below it a few inches? They painted? Did they have sales noted on them? Could the people even read then? These columns had truncated corners. It's also how they've been worked like this to provide a grip for the plaster, where it's not just rock, which provides the same. There's a big shelf at the back. Nicely carved elephants. Did all of this structure have something like this across its lintels or below its ceiling or its roof line? This may be my entrance to the Singh Palace and grounds. Methinks it is. Lovely big grounds. This is the Paleswar Temple. Character on the right, I can't tell whether that's a war club or a small drum that he has, or she has, in one of her 4 hands. One of these, if not both, are some iteration of Shiva, I suspect. And there's that little statue over there of the, I call it a pig bull. So apparently there is nothing else to see here. So we'll wander through, go out that gate and see if we can go to our left, get back to our main road, which might give us access to that area that we saw on the left coming up. Here, I'm guessing was a building, or it's just a warehouse for architectural elements. But you see these pedestals here, they're too well laid out, no matter how they're being used. And the first portions of them seem to be a legitimate placement of columns, although that theory falls apart when you see that everything else is situated the same and it's mostly different. Well, my first European or American of the day. You can see this temple is very similar to the other, richly carved. I'm sure that it's not whether you got one already that's important, it's the amount of merit that the man, usually, who has it built gets. Just like the side chapels in Catholic and Christian cathedrals. Here what's interesting is that you've got a truncated, what looks like a defensive wall. That suggests that this complex and that wall was modified to accommodate this temple complex? I don't know. Some heavy weathering here, so we'll go to the other side where their guide was. The road I walked up earlier and may have to again. I don't think so. It's back through there that I walked to get into that palace's garden grounds. The flowers are pretty here. That's very nice. My bet is this 4-armed character woman is Shiva, one of her forms, his form. Unfortunately, the weathering is quite extensive, so we don't get an ideal shot of these. A whole row. Here we can look up into the dome. Many of them are pretty simple. This one looks to be quite involved. Forms the railing, if you will. Seems to have, looks like a little bird, some other characters. Then these larger figures may, again, all be iterations of Shiva. Same with this set. This one, who knows? Maybe it's Shiva doing different things, which are maybe her iterations. I wonder if the elephants symbolize the strength of base, and I wonder if these monster types that we've seen before represent hell. Pretty little side temple, but notice the thickness of this wall. You can see that this very much looks like it was restored. Clear that this location had to be so important that it could justify tearing a hole in that wall. It also would suggest that at this point in time, when they constructed this, the danger they perceived before was not as great. So this kind of ties our little jaunt together, because this wall drives into that structure that we looked at when we first started walking up. And you can see that the wall did a right angle and came across from left to right. The building we saw at the beginning and at the end is walk inside this round tower so we can, if we can, get a sense of its dimensions. It reeks of and is filled with pigeon crap, of course. You can see stones sticking out that might have formed the basis for a second floor, and up there a third and perhaps a fourth. This is just a space inside of the wall and this building and the tower that's going off to the left. But you can see from those supports that it probably held a wall, I mean not a wall, but a floor up above somewhere. And maybe that was the floor that allowed it to be defended. Climbed up onto the top of the parapet. No surprise. Looks somewhat like the one we saw before, but with these embellishments, it's more so. The area we were in before that had those posts, support posts. There are a number of walls that are traversing the hill as I walk down, but this is a major entryway through one of them. The door was simple but perhaps effective. Notice we don't see any elephant. Opposite the gate was again another temple of some sort, something akin to what we've seen this morning, and part of the wall, and a bastion, a gate, and another. I don't know what that complex is up there, and I'm not going to find out. Here another shooting portal on a traversing lower wall, and its gate and accompanying tower and temple, and then the next wall up. The other side of that gate with its bastion, and then an intersecting wall to the one up there, and then another to kind of close off this tight corner, for which there is, you got it, another arch entryway. This may sound like and seem like a rather pointless exercise in recording this stuff, but consider how much easier it is to drop a bomb. And now you've got an idea of one of the advantages of modern warfare. Kill more and destroy more, easier and faster. Death to them, less to us. This is an interesting gate. I rather imagine that Those were supports for extensions that made this into an arch also. This is a view from the other side of Ganesh Pole, that gate that we just walked through. Notice how those shooting ports on the outside flare out into those very pretty teardrop motif, fitting in with the overall usual motif that we see. Again, another tight U-turn, highly defensible. The work that went into building this. This is a very nice gate, a lower one, not as tall. It's nice because it's shrouded in trees. And this is Hanuman pole. This is the other side of it. That they built a little shooting position from that outcropping rock also. Very simple gate and a very simple wall to accompany it. You can see we're starting to get close to the bottom. This may be our last gate with a very interesting wall beyond it. Climb up here and take a better look at it. So here's what the fortress looks like before you get even past the first lowest wall. Hope you packed a lunch. An impressive temple down here. And on this side, a very impressive wall. What's curious is it's not impressive on the other side of this gate.